Sri Krishna, by the mercy of our dear and very merciful Gurudev, Nitlila Pravist, Om Vishnu Padashtuta Srimati Bhaktivedanta Sri Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ji, and all our Rupanu Guru Parampara Guru Vargas, and all the Vaishnavas, we are able to do this 6 days Acharya KESARI festival to honor the 125th appearance day of our Param Gurudev, Nitlila Pravist, Om Vishnu Padashtuta Srimati Bhakti Pragyan Srila Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ji. And today is the 6th day, but I will not say the final day because we would like to continue whole year. It's 125th year of our Param Gurudev, so we'll try to organize more programs. And yesterday was this 125th appearance day, which we celebrated all over in Zoom as well as in various temples. And to continue this on the 6th day, today we have a very dear disciple of Srila Gurudev and also Pujapad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupad. And he's been living in India for a long time, though he is not born in this country. And not only is living in India, but he has taken shelter of Navadip Dham, the highest Dham for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And in Navadip Dham also he has taken shelter of Godrum Dweep, just like Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakurji or Saptam Goswami. And he's staying very close to his house and also his Samadhi. So in a very high place, he's taken shelter and he's doing his bhajan very nicely. Not only is doing his own bhajan, but also engaging all the fallen jivas through his classes on Zoom and various other means. So today we are very fortunate to have him with us. And so Pujapad Srila Bhaktivedanta Tridandi Maharaj is with us today from Godrum Dweep, and we're going to hear from his lotus mouth the various glories of our Param Gurudev, his divine character, and his divine teachings, which will be very beneficial for all of us. Dandavat Pranam Maharaji.
Dandavats Acharya Prabhu.
Welcome in this program.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Thank you, Ajayji. Thank you, Jai. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm very appreciative. I'm most appreciative that you've taken the initiative to do 6-day festival. I mean, this is unprecedented. We've had, I think, 4 days for Rupa Goswami Turabhav, but I have not heard of a 6-day festival. This is a first, I believe. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So I'm very honored to be here, coming up towards the end of this program, or even though Ajay just intimated that perhaps it would go for even longer for the rest of the year, being the 125th anniversary of our most beloved Param Gurudev. So I'll try to offer a few words in glorification of our most beloved Param Gurudev. Om Agina Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Guruve Gauda Chandraya Radhikaya Dadaraye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namaha. And first of all, offering millions and millions of Dandavat Pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nityalila Pravishta Om Asto Tadasarashishimat Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering the same again, millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nityalila Pravishta Om Asto Tadasarashishimat Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupad. And today in particular, I'm offering millions and millions of Sastang Dandavat Pranams to our most beloved Acharya Sringa, KESARI, Kirti Ratna, the most wonderful, divine, powerful personality, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj. And I hope that I can offer some adequate Pushpanjali at his divine lotus feet. Jai. So the Abhirbhav was yesterday, and this is the Vyasa Puja of Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj. So Vyasa Puja, this is the person who takes the seat of Vyas and becomes the recipient of the previous acharyas. Guru is one. Guru is speaking on behalf of his guru, who is speaking on behalf of his guru, etc. It's exactly like an electric current coming through without interruption or break. So coming from Vyasadeva, Vyasadeva was receiving instructions from Narad. Narad was being instructed by Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is hearing directly the flute song of Sri Krishna. So this is where we are plugged into, so to speak. But this line that we are now residing in, this Gaudiya line, this is exceptional because this is being empowered directly by Srimati Radhika. Radhika only wants to facilitate Krishna's desires. She only wants to satisfy all Krishna's needs and his most cherished desires. So he manifested as Sachinandan Gaurahari practically 500 years ago. And all of the acharyas coming down from Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, all the 6 Goswamis, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Narottam, Srinivas, etc., Srinivasacharya, Baladev Vidyabhushan, Bhaktivedanta Thakur, all these personalities are all directly in the current of Sri Radhika's lotus feet, directly emanating from here. So we see in the life of our beloved Param Gurudev, he appeared 3 days before. If you just look at the calendar, it's like we celebrate his appearance day 3 days before his divine master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada. And this reminds us that he's coming in preparation to serve his divine master. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was the Jagat Guru in the world. He was laying the foundation totally for these teachings of his divine father, Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur, and the energy of Srila Gokishore Das Babaji. He was preparing the ground here for future connections to Srimati Radhika ultimately through our Guru Parampara, through our Rupanuga Guru Parampara. So this is our line. This is where we are up to. We are performing our various sadhan bhajans, etc. And we are focused very much on this connection to Sri Radhika ultimately through the lotus-like instructions of our beloved Gurudevs. So most of us perhaps on this Zoom today are connected to Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, who was the great disciple, of course, of Param Gurudev. And I was just reflecting on the tremendous fearless mood in all of our Guru Vargya, particularly coming from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to contend with so many anomalies in the world around him when he was born. He had to contend with the British Raj, with their controlling influences. He had to contend with so many apasiddhantas, and he so boldly dealt with them in so many different ways. The story of Bishak Shane, etc. We hear tremendous courage and fortitude. Why do they have this courage and fortitude? Because they're utterly sold out, 100% servants of Srimati Radhika, and primarily their personal gurus in this line. So all this line is leading to the service directly to Sri Radhika. And then his powerful son, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Jagat Guru, his courage was immense. And we see this Acharya Singha, this Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, had exactly that same remarkable, astounding courage and conviction. If we have that utter nishchayatmika, this complete faith, nishchayatmika buddhi, this complete, without a shadow of doubt, shraddha shabde vishvasa koi sudrita nishchoy, this absolute confidence in the connection to Krishna. What can't you accomplish? What obstacles can't you confront? In the life of Srila Bhakti-Pragan Keshav Maharaj, and I'm sure it's been discussed in the previous days, he claims that he got his courage directly from Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji directly. He went to visit him once when he was in solitary within the latrine, and he was with some disciples, and Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji wasn't taking darshan or seeing anybody. But as soon as he told him that he was a disciple of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, then he opened the door and he let him in. And then they spoke. And at that time, Srila Bhakti-Pragan Keshav Maharaj was blessed by the benediction to be fearless. There would be no obstacles ever in his life. So he went forward with this vision, with this view. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had inherited such a tremendous vision from his powerful father, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, a vision where Mahaprabhu's name would be chanted all over the world. This was unprecedented at the time. At the time, there was just devotees living in collective groups together, different mats, like we read at the beginning of Jaiva Dharma. We read the different groups of Vaishnavas would be living together in small groups, perhaps 20 or 30 Vaishnavas together. They weren't in any cohesive, organized, institutional control whatsoever. This all came later. And his Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vision at that time was to inaugurate the entire world with the merciful current of Sachinandan Gaurahari's gifts. Mahaprabhu has come to give Prem Ras, Nirase, Korite, Ashvadan, Rag Marg. He's come to give us Raganuga Bhakti. How can you give this Raganuga Bhakti? It's so much easier for us to be following the path of rules and regulations. Why? Because it's governed by fear. This path of vaidhi marg is governed by fear, whereas the path of rag marg is governed by one quality of greed. So the whole consciousness has to be transformed in the individual to accommodate this appreciation, to come into this path of, and how can you become greedy when you haven't actually witnessed those divine pastimes, or you haven't actually witnessed Radha and Krishna? How do you become greedy? By witnessing the greed we saw reposing in the heart and mind of our beloved Gurudev. When we see his greed, when we see and are aware of his enthusiasm and how potent and how fearless he is in utter service to his Ishtadev, Sri Radhika, then we can pick up that current very easily and listen attentively and closely to their instructions and hear carefully how they are delineating between these two paths of Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti. Right at the beginning of Jaiva Dharma, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he makes this delineation. He makes this distinction very clearly. There's the path of Vaidhi and there's the path of Raganuga. And he makes it very clear. And this path of Rag Marg requires courage and fearlessness. And this fearlessness is coming directly from Sri Radhika. So we see particularly in the life of Srila Bhakti-Pragan Keshav Maharaj, this fearless personality who joined at such a young age. He was about 18 or 19. He came with his two aunties, Sarojini and Priyatma. They came together. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was saying, yes, and I will make 64 mats in India. And the ladies looked at Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati and said, well, you haven't even got practically money for your boga right now. How are you going to manifest 64 mats? And he said, Vinod Vihari will do. Vinod Vihari, Vinod Brahmachari, Vinod Vihari. This is Param Gurudev. This is Bhakti-Pragan Keshav Maharaj. He will do. And they were somewhat surprised, of course, but this was the fact. He was awarded, Srila Bhakti-Pragan Keshav Maharaj, Vinod Vihari, he was awarded the title Kirti Ratna, which means jewel-like activities. He could perform amazing acts He came from a very wealthy background. He came where he had been like a zamindar on his properties and had to go around collecting various tithes and taxes and so on. And he would do this in the name of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati later on. He would ride a horse around all the different properties and check with all the tenants and so on that they were paying their regular dues. And he was, people were afraid of him because they knew his one-pointed nishta. They could sense his nishta. Anything that was not focused on Radha and Krishna's service, on the objective of his Gurudev's vision, he would challenge. And we know in the life of Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, it's written that he spent so much of his time in the courts. It's amazing that these personalities, these sadhus, they were challenging the world through the courts, because through the courts was the place where the general materialistic people would listen to and have faith in. If they went through the courts and they were successful, then the materialists would nod their heads and say, oh yes, it must be authentic what they're actually doing if they got this government stamp of approval. Of course, the Vaishnavas don't need any government stamp of approval, but for the preaching purposes, this was absolutely necessary. So we see in the life of Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj, he did this with such energy. It became like practically his bhajan, taking all these various rascals to court. There was a time when in his early days, when he was the Muslims, they attacked the devotees at one point, and like fire, Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj responded and called the police immediately and arrested those Muslims and put them in jail. But when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati came to hear of this, he was not satisfied. He said, no, don't lock them in jail. We haven't come to put them in jail. We've come to reform them. You post the bail now yourselves and release those Muslims. We're not here to make enemies. We're here to actually give the instructions of Mahaprabhu, and that requires a softening of the heart. That requires, because we have to see the history. There had been so many Babajis, so many bogus groups up until the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur that had to be cut and purified. So the general populace was used to being cheated. They were used to these bogus groups. It was like common knowledge for them. So how to soften the heart generally, and the mystical way to do this, of course, was simply by vibrating the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Simply by the power of that vibration of the Hare Krishna mantra, that in itself is sufficient to soften the hearts of the conditioned souls. So this is our principal weapon, is the Hare Krishna mantra. So Harinam Kirtan was the most prominent factor that Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj and all the Gaudiya Mat coming from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, they preached this Harinam, and they not only preached it, they performed it with tremendous vigor and enthusiasm. So this was always the precursor to any of their programs. They would go for a long period just with chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and encouraging all the residents. Of course, here in Bengal, where the early days this was being conducted, then the nature of the Bengalis is very much affectionate towards the chanting, towards Mahaprabhu's mission. Nityananda Prabhu himself, he inaugurated practically this movement in Bengal. Mahaprabhu was in Puri performing his bhajan for 24 years and 18 years very deeply in the Gambhira. And all during this time, Nityananda Prabhu was in Kardahar, Srikant, all places all over Bengal, sowing the seeds of this Mahamantra. But it became lost through time. Not lost, but it became downgraded because the Vaishnavas were not becoming qualified sufficiently to broadcast this message. Vaishnavism was always going on after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was here, but it wasn't prominent. So it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur who erected once again that light of pure Shuddha Vaishnavism on the planet. And it was his divine wish to have a son who would be like a ray of Vishnu, who would carry it on. So this Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he could not do this when he was chanting. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was chanting his billions of names in the was it the Yogpit area, I think? And he had a vision of the Panchatattva. And of course, it was somewhat daunting to consider, oh, I'm being requested to spread this Krishna consciousness. I have no men, I have no money. What am I going to do? And Mahaprabhu himself said, I will send you men and money. No need to be concerned whatsoever for this. So when any newer person like Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj would come to him, he would say instantly, oh, Mahaprabhu has sent. Like with Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, Bhakti Dvaita Madhav Maharaj, all of these personalities, he would say immediately, oh, my Prabhu has sent this personality to support his mission. So this mission was the principal focus. And this mission calls for the softening of the heart, even though the activities going through courts, etc., and challenging the Mayavads, challenging the different sects, etc., was a very forceful engagement. Nevertheless, the sweetness and the current of the rasik katha was always flowing. It said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was simply concerned with cutting the jungles of Mayavad. And this is true. The jungles were so dense during his time that he had to do like that. And Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj also took up that task. But simultaneously, they would be speaking and feeding the sweetest harikatha conceivable. Otherwise, how could my Gurudev today, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, speak the sweetest, most beautiful rasik harikatha, unless he'd heard all of these topics from his Gurudev? So our Gurudev has told us many times that he would hear these topics from the lotus-like mouth of his Gurudev. So this is the lineage, this is the line coming from originally Vyasadeva, from Narad, from Lord Brahma. This is our current, our line, and all focusing on the glorification of Srimati Radhika. It is her glories that we are trying to increase within the world. We're performing our various sadhan bhajan, our Vacho Vegam, Manasakroda Vegam, etc., the rules and regulations, simply to support the current of the ability to walk towards bhav bhakti. 3 types of bhakti: sadhan bhakti, bhav bhakti, and prem bhakti. If your sadhan bhakti is not being focused on bhav bhakti, your sadhan bhakti is 0. How can it be anything more than 0? If you're not focusing on bhav, it means your sadhan is for some other purpose, mukti or bhukti. Mukti, if these witches, pischachi, of bhukti and mukti are residing in the heart, then this is like a dog-eating prostitute sitting there, Raghunath Das says in the Manashiksha. So if the path is not focused on bhav bhakti, so how can these great noble personalities coming directly from the spiritual world, we should appreciate this also today. Where is the home of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Kamala Manjari, within the realms of this apricot Vrindavan. Where is the home of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati? Naini Mani Manjari, the eye glance of Sri Radhika, and Vinod Manjari, Srila Param Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj, my Gurudev, Raman Manjari. All of these personalities, this is our line, this is where they're coming from. And our Gurudev, he impressed upon us time and time again to just develop this desire that I want to be a palya dasi of Srimati Radhika. So this is a very esoteric state of consciousness. This is not going to just come out of the blue. This requires careful examination and study, and above all, mercy from the acharyas. So today we're honoring such a powerful personality as Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj, and we're praying to him to bestow upon us his mercy so that we can engage fully in bhajan. We see also in the life of Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj, there was one time when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he just alluded to the point that someone had recaptured Swananda Sukata Kunj. Swananda Sukata Kunj was the traditional home of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's father. He was gifted that property from his first disciple, Krishnadas. And that was again cheated out of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's hands. And he was just mentioning this to Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj. Immediately, he left and he could not sleep until he had again restored that property to its rightful owner. So many occasions like this. Of course, the most famous occasion is during at Paramatala when they were having the parikrama. And because of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's such strong preaching, the Smartas and the caste Goswamis, they had all become deprived of their regular incomes because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was smashing the misconceptions, the Shakti Bhaktas that were there, smashing their misconceptions that they should just give all of their money to these different cheaters at the temple and so on, and getting no remuneration. No mercy was coming back from them. They were simply just lining their pockets and looking after their families. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he very, very boldly was preaching against this. So these people, they were being deprived of their livelihood. So they decided to kill him. They decided to kill Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And in Bengal, this can be very much realized, a reality we see here today. Many times there's a mob and they focus on one particular politician or something, and they succeed, they kill that person. It's happened even recently that mobs just flare up and they desire the life of a particular person, and that happens. So they were very, very serious, this mob, and they attacked Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's parikrama party with bottles and stones with the absolute intention of killing him. This was their intention. They were hard-hitting, ruthless, hired gundas, and they wanted to kill him. And it was must have been such an intimidating atmosphere for the gentle Vaishnavas. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, of course, was in the midst of it. And instantly, without second thought, Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj, Vinod Vihari, he took Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati into a nearby house immediately. He knew the owners of the house straight away, because Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj was very familiar. Just on another point, my Gurudev would say, he said in a lecture I was listening to recently, that my Gurudev claims that he had personally no type of logic himself. He didn't conduct logical things, but his Gurudev was a man of many logics, he said. He said his Gurudev had so many logics. So his Gurudev was like wired to all of the situation around, and he knew so many of the residents of Navadvip. So he quickly pulled his divine master through a doorway into a house and immediately told him without hesitation, give me your saffron robes, take my white dress, go out the back door, and your life will be saved. And I know how to deal with these people. I will deal with them very easily. And he was of that nature. This is his caliber. This is the caliber. He was appearing like a worldly man in some sense, like he would ride his horse, collect the tithes, etc. He would speak to everybody, but simultaneously, internally, he had such profound wisdom and understanding of the purity of our path. So in both counts, he was actually completely present, so to speak. So he took his beloved master's saffron cloth and boldly walked out to confront the mob. But of course, at that time, all of the devotees had taken great caution and they were protective of him. The devotees themselves were thinking, oh, this must be Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. They didn't recognize him because they were the same size, same build, etc. So they were thinking, oh, this is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also. But in the meantime, practically, as soon as this had happened, they called the police. And when the police came, they had to intervene. They were compelled to intervene. There was no excuse for them at that time. So they had to. Otherwise, it would have just been too much of a sham. So as soon as the police came, they asked, do you want to file a court case against these gundas? And this news was related to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And he said, no, these gundas have done more good to us than we can conceive. This event will be broadcast in the local newspapers as well as the national newspapers. They have made more publicity for us than we could have ever made just by our parikrama. So he was very happy, actually, that this whole event had turned around, because these personalities are only seeing through the eyes of Srimati Radhika. They're only seeing through her eyes that everything that comes to the devotees must be in Krishna's favor. There's no casualties in Radhika's army, so to speak. Everything is going to be successful because it's all for the glorification of Sri Radhika, who only wants the most beloved Guru, satisfaction and happiness of her beloved Shyam Sundar. So this was the mood at that time. There was actually celebration practically by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, because he was commenting, oh, this proves my mission is going well, that people have become so disturbed by my words. We should never be afraid to boldly go out and speak these truths to various people. Don't be shy. Don't cover it over. Many of us are shy from birth. I know. I'm shy. I'm not such a forward person, but my Gurudev sometimes pushes me many times into the front seat, so to speak, on the stage, where you have to loudly shout out these truths, and you have to loudly confront the opposition, so to speak, because Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj's mood was anything that is not supporting the objective of coming to the lotus feet of Sri Radhika is opposed to Sachinandan Gaurahari's teachings. And I will not tolerate this if it's in my means to actually do something about it. So this was the mood and the spirit of Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj. And of course, the great disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who was bestowed the sannyas order by Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj to continue this fearless current. This was given to him in Mathura in 1959. In 1959, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was sitting in a small room near the Jamuna in Mathura, and my Gurudev, he went and he found him. And he immediately, because he knew Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, Abhay Charan, this fearless personality, he knew him from his relationship with his Gurudev previously, and his Gurudev had always commented, this is my most bosom friend. So he had seen Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj and Srila Swami Maharaj together in very beautiful, embracing circumstances. So as soon as Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj discovered Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami living solitary life beside the Jamuna in Mathura, he immediately helped him pack his bag and brought him to the mutt. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada wasn't so interested in joining any type of institution. He had already approached the Bagh Bazar group coming from Kunja Bihari, Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj in Calcutta, and he'd requested sannyas from them. And they told him to come and live in the mutt for 6 to 8 months, and then they would examine him and decide themselves whether or not he should take that sannyas order. So Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he knew probably they would want him to get involved in their various publications of their literatures and so on, and many other things that were not completely focused in what he was on a path, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to carry out the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to go to the Western countries. So he was compiling his 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam and his Bhagavad Gita, very one-pointed, fixed on this. And he knew also simultaneously that to go without wearing the sannyas robes would not be the best proposition. So when he arrived in the mutt, by the encouragement of my Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, he eventually took sannyas from the hand of Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj. And this is completely remarkable when we think about the current that we are living in now. We've come from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, through Gokishore Das Babaji, through Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, through Param Gurudev, through Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and to the lotus feet of Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. All of this current is tangibly, we can see this fearlessness is running through all of these personalities, because the opposition that Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada had to cope with when he went to the Western worlds was just horrendous. Who would accept a saffron-robed sannyasi who was preaching the pure Vaishnava precepts? At that time also, everyone was used to being cheated, Vivekananda and all people like this. They were looking for some mukti and bhukti, but here was someone preaching Shuddha Bhakti. So this required that sannyas ashram. With that sannyas ashram comes a special potency. That potency is carried through, because in the sannyas ashram, you're sitting on the very edge of the blade, so to speak. You're pushed onto the back of the speeding horse, and that is your savor. You cannot transgress one way or the other. You're fixed in that path, and you're fully supported by the entire Guru Varga behind you. So this condition of sannyas is a very essential ingredient in Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada's mission to the West, and we see how utterly successful he was due to Param Gurudev. Unfortunately, Param Gurudev's glories have not been propagated as they were desired by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. They were desired very much by him to push. He wrote back at the departure time, 1968, when Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj left this world. He wrote to the Gaudiya Math at that time and requested a photograph so his artist could paint a beautiful picture, and this picture would be represented on all his altars. But by divine arrangement or whatever, this never manifests. So practically speaking, the glories of Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj remain hidden to many of those ISKCON devotees. Perhaps at a later date, they will all become revealed, much to their astonishment, of actually what glories they have missed hearing about. So this is, however, the Lord has arranged things. But without this bestowal of sannyas on Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, this preaching would have not have taken off with the same vigor. And we know that mood of utter fearlessness that was in the heart of my Gurudev. When my Gurudev was banned from speaking in ISKCON in 1994, every year my Gurudev would go to the Krishna Balaram temple and he would speak the glories of Baladev Prabhu. Every year he would go there. Satyanarayan Babaji, who was not a Babaji at that time, he would translate. And my Gurudev would speak. He would take 6 or 7 Premananda Prabhu, different devotees with him, Madhav Maharaj, etc. They were all just like saffron brahmacharis. And my Gurudev would speak regularly in the Krishna Balaram temple. Then in 1994, they told him that they'd had a GBC meeting and they no longer wanted to host him in the Krishna Balaram temple. Up until that time, my Gurudev had been speaking very strongly to many of the ISKCON leaders on Vilap Kusumanjali, Jaiva Dharma, Manashiksha, etc. And these were the leaders, the GBC of ISKCON. And he'd been cultivating them, but it had come to a breaking point in their society when they thought that because half of the society was opposed to Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj and half was supportive. So again, this highlights the distinction between rag and vaidhi. Some want vaidhi and to maintain vaidhi and others don't. So when my Gurudev heard that, he said, they don't know who my Gurudev is. My Gurudev was a lion and I am the cub of that lion. They don't know that they have woken up the cub of that lion. And they became my Gurudev became very inspired at that time, and he started planning for his overseas journey. Because previous to that, those GBC men, they'd invited him overseas, but they said, don't speak that the jiva didn't fall from Vaikuntha. Our policy is that the jiva falls from Vaikuntha. You must maintain that status quo. Otherwise, you'll completely upset our cart. So Gurudev, of course, wasn't party to supporting that one iota. So when he came alone in 1996, when he first left and came alone, he came fully in his own light. But it wasn't just his own light. It was the light of Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj, the light of his Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. That was the light he was surrounded by. And the light, of course, of Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada was the closest friend of Srila Bhakti Narayan Maharaj. Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Maharaj was the only person sending him mridangas and cartels and so on, even deities, into that dark land of the US. No one else supported him. So it's like such a family. And it seems that Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj is right at the center of this family, because without that connection with Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and our beloved Gurudev, then it wouldn't all be as it is. It wouldn't be a sealed family unit. But we are a sealed family unit, and we have come from this tremendous potency emanating from the lotus feet of Sri Radhika. As we've said before, all of this current is coming from her lotus feet, and it's reflected very much in that incredible astakam, that Radha Vinod Vihari Tattvastakam, that Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj composed. He composed so many astakams. He was such a literary personality, as well as being very bold and forceful externally in the world, in the courts and so on, and dealing with Muslims and dealing with mobs and dealing with things like that. But at the same time, we sing every single morning, Mangala Shri Guru Gora. This was composed by our beloved Param Gurudev. Such a sweet, sweet song, invoking all the color and beauty and splendor of Vrindavan, just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur would write. Same mood, same heart, same message. And then in his Radha Vinod Vihari Tattvastakam, he's writing that he worships the lotus feet. I'm reading now. I worship the lotus feet of that form of Sri Krishna, who by being absorbed in anxious thoughts of Srimati Radharani has absorbed her golden feature. So he's writing right at the very beginning of this Radha Vinod Vihari Tattvastakam. He was so conversant in the philosophy and so on. Of course, there's the famous pastime when Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sri Maharaj first came to the mat, and he saw this devotee in white sitting with his feet up on a table, and somebody was fanning him, and all these sannyasis were coming to him and offering pranams to him, and he was listening very carefully to what they were saying, and then he was instructing them, guiding them. And Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sri Maharaj, he comments, who is this person? He seems to be so nonchalantly just sitting there, not looking for any sort of grandeur, just sitting with his feet up, just very relaxed mood. And all these sannyasis are offering him such sort of respectful obeisances and so on. And then he found out later, oh, this is Vinod Vihari. He is like the manager of the entire organization of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. So then, what was that start pastime? There was one pastime when one devotee, I don't remember his name, saw Vinod Vihari. He was reading the Sandarbhas. I think it was the Priti Sandarbha. He saw him reading this Sandarbha, and he complained to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, why is he reading such high katha? And then Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati said, you should go and ask him. So he asked him, and Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj said, oh, I'm so fallen, I'm just reading the words, but you can ask me any question. So this sannyasi continued to interrogate him on all sorts of questions. And he was just absolutely astonished with the erudition of Srila Param Gurudev Vinod Vihari. He had read all the Sandarbhas a number of times by that time. He hadn't neglected anything, because every cent of his time, every paisa of his time was only engaged in the divine service of his spiritual master, who set the example. What was the example that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati set? He told us in his writings that when he examined his guru, Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he said, if I had found 1 second when my Gurudev was not focused, I would not have accepted him. Not just 23 hours and, 59 minutes and 59 seconds. I would not have accepted him. But I saw that continuously throughout the 360 days of the year, he was just only focused completely on his seva to please the divine couple, Sri Radha and Krishna. So this mood can only come from absolute fearlessness. And that fearlessness is coming from the lotus feet of Srimati Radhika. We say this beautiful verse, what is it? Vayam dvitiya biniveshitam syat isadu bhatasya vibhari oshmiti tanmaya toyo buddha avacham bhakti aikeksham guru devatama. One is fearful if he's sinking in material absorption. This is where fear arises from. Fear arises from material absorption. So these personalities were walking beyond that material absorption. Therefore, of course, they were fearless. Of course, they were utterly fearless. So such a shining luminary in our line of Srila, this lion guru, Singha guru, and this Kirti Ratna, this personality. We have been so fortunate to have listened so many times to our beloved Gurudev speak his glories. And usually my Gurudev would get just a few words and then he couldn't speak anymore. His heart would be overflowing and somebody else would actually carry on the glorification. So we have got impressions from that, impressions of the tremendous respect and awe and admiration that Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami had for Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj. So we have also imbibed so much of that respect and honor and awe. And also from Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. There's a very beautiful lecture that he gave at the departure day of Srila Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj. He didn't realize he was so sick. He didn't realize he was, because he wasn't so old. He was born in 1898. He left this world in 1968. So that means 70 odd years old. He wasn't extremely elderly. He didn't reach like my Gurudev reached into the 90s. So he wasn't so old. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada began his preaching mission practically when he was 70 years old. So Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada wasn't expecting him to leave this world so prematurely like that. It was a shock to him, a great, great shock, because they definitely were the absolute bosom friends. And they felt great affinity towards each other because they had the same vision, the exact same vision passed down to them from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He had seen this vision. We read the works of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and so many of his works are mystical visions that he's projecting in Jaiva Dharma. There's so many examples of this. He knew what the conditioned souls were capable of achieving with the right nourishment and the right guidance. He knew what it was possible for them to achieve, and he worked tirelessly towards that end. So today, I'm really grateful to Ajay Prabhu for allowing me an opportunity to speak something, a little bit of Pushpanjali to this most beautiful, incredible, powerful person. And I hope I've said something of value that can carry on his teachings and mood and light to all the sadhaks and devotees listening to this harikatha. Thank you so much. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhavevacha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnave namo namaha. Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. I think it's so wonderful that you're doing a 6-day festival. He could do with a 10-day festival, like you said. But I think a 6-day festival is unprecedented and it's very, very wonderful. I'm very grateful to you, Ajay Prabhu.
Thank you, Maharajji. It was such a nice harikatha, flowing like amrit, flowing like nectar effortlessly out of Maharajji's heart, which is drenched in love for Radhika and Guru Parampara. We can sense that from what he spoke. And he reminded us about another Mahabhagavat, Pujapad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, how he remembered him on the day he left this world. So I would like to, I'm sure all of you must have heard it already, but let's hear again the words of that Mahabhagavat, his Guru Bhai, his younger Guru, God brother, who had so much love for him. And as Puja Maharaj said, that he wanted his picture to be in all the ISKCON temples, which has not been followed. So somewhere we are doing aparadh to our Guru. Some people are doing, not all. So let's hear those words, what Puja Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj said on that day. So I'm going to share with you right now, and we'll all hear that. For those, we are all disciples and grand disciples, so it is our duty to glorify. But look at what his God brother is saying, and how much love he has for him. Oh, there's no volume. I think there's, you can't hear, right, Maharaj?
I heard for a second.
Or the volume was there? I didn't hear anything, so I thought that nobody could hear.
No, I
try
didn't
again.
really hear anything.
Let me try again. Anyway, I think I'm not able to do it somehow, but I will suggest everyone to hear it. It's on Gaudi or some channel, and they
You
have
can
shared it
post
very
post
nicely.
it somewhere. Post it somewhere.
Yeah, I will share the link. I already shared the link in my WhatsApp group. You can hear it. Pujapad Swami Maharaj is almost crying, and he wrote a resolution. We got it signed from all his disciples. I didn't want to enter the sannyas ashram, and Puja Maharajji forced me. Maharajji, you want to say something?
He was forced, yes. At the same time, he understood his duty. At the same time, he understood that his duty called for that ashram. He wasn't at all attracted to the fanfare of that ashram or the pratishta or the following that sometimes goes along with that ashram. He was actually averse to that completely. He was a very humble man, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. He had no desire to tread that path, but for the preaching sake, for his beloved Gurudev, then he finally relented. He'd had 3 dreams previously where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was encouraging him to do this, but he didn't do that. And then finally he accepted from this. This is all just like divine arrangement. It had to come from Srila Bhakti. Otherwise we wouldn't be here today glorifying Param Gurudev without that act that went on. So that's all. Ajay, you're muted.
Yes, thank you, Maharajji, for explaining that. So, yes, we are so grateful to this Mahan Acharya and his divine character. We just heard from Puja Maharajji, how he was soft like anything, so merciful, and how he became like a lion when the question came about his Guru Seva. When somebody tried to obstruct that desire of his Guru, he would take a sword in his hand and he will do anything. He became like mad, just like Maharaj said. He described so beautifully how he saved the life of his own master. It is not very easy to give your clothes to your Gurudev. It requires a lot of courage. Even if you want to give your life, but to ask your Gurudev to wear your clothes, it's not very easy. To give your white clothes to your Guru, imagine giving our clothes to our Guru and taking his clothes. But he did not think of those things. He just thought only how I can serve. He could do anything. He was like a madman if, as far as service is concerned. He would not stop it. He had no limits to observe in this regard. But when it came to being merciful, even there he had no limits. As a young boy, he spent all his pocket money for the poor, for the people who needed, not on its own. So look at his, from a small child, he was so merciful, so soft in his heart. And somebody told on this program that some people came and stole some vegetables from the mud when he came. And everybody was trying to catch them, those thieves, and beat them up. But when Puja Maharaj came, he said, "What are you doing?" Instead of beating them and scolding those thieves, Maharaj gave him more vegetables. He said, "Give him more." Everybody was astonished that these guys are trying to steal our vegetables and you are going to give them more. He said, "You should think why he is stealing. Because he is needy, he is hungry. His tummy is not full. He will steal. What else he is going to do?" So he gave him more vegetables. So his character was like this. On the one hand, he would ride a horse, like Maharaj was saying, and take the taxes with very sternness and very boldness. On the other hand, he would even help give the thieves and not take any offense to them. So many court cases he did, but the court cases were not to acquire property or anything else. It was only to protect the Siddhanta. He will not compromise on Siddhanta. But when the question came of property, he would let go everything. And he just walked off from the mud he managed for his whole life. He did not take even a pin from there. He just walked off empty-handed and made Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti there. He did not file any court case. He could have done. A lot of people advised him, "Maharaji, why don't you file court case? You have rightful uh, claim to all this property. You've been managing it for so long." Maharaji said, "I have not come here for property. I want to protect my Guru's Siddhanta. I want to be established in that and uh, advertise it everywhere in the whole world," and which we saw happen very beautifully through his disciples. Our dear Gurudev, Pujapad Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, Pujapad Bhaktivedanta Maharaj. So everything again manifested very nicely. So we should see how these Mahatmas, where they are absorbed, as Puja Maharaj was saying, no material absorption at all. Because fear comes from material absorption. Maharaj made this statement, very nice statement. If you are absorbed materially, fear will surely come. Because all the material world is going to vanish and it will give you fear, including our bodies. But when you're absorbed spiritually, there won't be any fear because nothing is vanishable. Everything is eternal. So the root cause of fear, Maharaj describes so nicely. Fear arises from material absorption. And I like the way Maharaj spoke very poetically. I was very touched when he said, invoking the beauty, colors, and splendor of Vrindavan. Look how beautifully those words were chosen. Very nice, Maharaj. I really liked it. And he said about our Srila Gurudev. I don't know if Puja Bodhan Maharaj has come or not. Maharaj, if you are here, please put a camera on so that we know you are here. I don't see him, but so till the time he comes, we can discuss. Maharaj, you can also say something if you're inspired in between. I'll keep talking like this.
You're speaking beautifully. You're speaking very beautifully. You're filling in all the gaps that I was thinking about, but
I cannot fill the gaps, Maharaj. No, I do not have that capacity to fill gaps of a senior sannyasi like yours who is immersed in bhajan.
No.
I'm still materially absorbed in so many things. So, but yes,
his only focus was to purify the conditioned souls. And with the nourishment of Radhika's current through the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his Guru Varga. Just that was
So
everything.
Maharaj is very nicely summed up in one line. Only aim and objective for which he led his life was to spread Radharani's that prem, and nothing else. Anything which came in between, he would remove it and then only go for it. So that is the aim of all our acharyas, all our Guru Vargas, all our parampara. So we offer our pranams to such a great personality. Also, I offer my Dandavat pranams to Pujyapat Bhaktivedanta Tridandi Maharaj, who has given us his precious time from the holy dham of Navdeep, from near Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's place, very holy place. We can see the purity emanating from him, from the holy dham and his personality. Thank you, Maharaj. Dandavat pranams to you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Now
we welcome Pujyapat Bhaktivedanta Bodhan Maharaj, who has joined us from another holy dham of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from the Jagannath Puri Dham, where Mahaprabhu spent his entire sannyas life. And he not only spent, he experienced, oh, sorry, I should speak in Hindi now. अब हम हमारे पूज्यपाद भक्तिवेदांत बोधायन महाराज जी का स्वागत करते हैं, जिन्होंने हमें पूरी धाम से हमारे साथ जुड़ने वाले हैं। और पूरी धाम हमारे चैतन्य महाप्रभु ने संन्यास जीवन वहीं पे बिताया, और जो उन्नत उज्जवल रस का आस्वादन किया गंभीरा में, पूरी धाम में ही किया। और महाराज जी हमारे बहुत सुंदर तरीके से सेवा कर रहे हैं गुरु जी की विरह स्थली है, जहाँ पे गुरु जी नित्य लीला में प्रवेश किया। उस स्थान को पूज्य महाराज जी बहुत सुंदर तरीके से नया एक मंदिर का निर्माण करा रहे हैं। बहुत बड़ा मंदिर वहाँ पे बन रहा है, ऑलरेडी बहुत बड़ा मंदिर है और बड़ा हमारा मठ भी है, लेकिन पूज्य महाराज जी ने और भी गुरुदेव की महिमा बढ़ाने के लिए अपनी जान उसमें लगा दी है और बहुत बड़े मंदिर तैयार कर लिया। न केवल मंदिर, महाराज जी ने नया स्कूल खोला है, IGVT स्कूल, जो कि एक हमारे संघ में एक नया इनिशिएटिव है। और ये बहुत अच्छा बात है, गुरुदेव ऐसा चाहते थे कि हम ये संस्कार बचपन से ही बच्चों को दें, ताकि जब वो बड़े हों तो एक बहुत अच्छे भक्त बने, बहुत अच्छे नागरिक बने। तो ये महाराज जी ने बहुत बड़ी पहल करी है और हम चाहेंगे कि ये पहल अलग अलग स्थानों में भी हो और सभी लोग इसमें योगदान दें, किसी भी तरह से हो पाए। और यही ऐसे स्कूल जगह जगह खुलने चाहिए पूरे भारतवर्ष में, और मैं तो चाहूँगा विदेश में भी खुले। अगर गुरु जी की हमारी इच्छा हो तो अवश्य ही ऐसा होगा। तो आइए ज़्यादा ना बोल के हम लोग पूज्य महाराज जी का स्वागत करते हैं। दंडवत प्रणाम महाराज जी।
दंडवत प्रणाम।
आपका स्वागत है महाराज जी कार्यक्रम में।
सब लोग को दंडवत प्रणाम।
आप इस आचार्य केसरी उत्सव के सबसे आखिरी वक्ता है, जो कि सबको समराइज करके मतलब अभी के लिए हम चाहते हैं कि उत्सव पूरे साल चलता रहे, तो आगे भी चलाएंगे, लेकिन ये 6 दिन का जो उत्सव था उसमें से आज 6वें दिन के अब आखिरी वक्ता है। तो जिस प्रकार गुरुजी लास्ट में सब कुछ समराइज करते थे, तो ये आपकी जिम्मेवारी आज बन रही है।
हाँ ठीक है, मैं शुरू करूं फिर।
जी महाराज जी शुरू।
वंदे गुरु पद द्वंद्वम भक्त वृंद